just happened, and which is something that I've done several times. I mean, I used to do it myself. We did it now in complete silence for the sake of the demonstration, but you're actually allowed to speak and to comment and to chat and to discuss. So as both Master Ip and Professor Zarini said, this is not so stylized and formalized as it seems. After all, it's a friendly gathering to taste tea, but it's not something so stiff as it may have looked from the way we performed it. We had to do it that way so that you could all see what was happening, but in fact it's a much more relaxed thing, affair that it looked. I suppose you agree, yes. Now, questions. Are there any question in any language concerning any of the papers that were presented today? Apparently not. Are you sure? This is the last. Okay, thank you.
C'è il gelato, aspetta, te lo facciamo recapitare.
Mi pare prima salire là, però. Usciamo questo.
Allora, non è una domanda, riguardo al testo della diffusione del tè in Giappone. A un certo punto in un testo del 1200 si parla di questa pianta cinese e indiana molto diffusa in Cina e in India, è giusto?
Non si sente col...
Sì. No, si sente benissimo. Sì.
Allora, in un testo che non mi ricordo i nomi, su queste cose sono abbastanza distratto, lei però parlava di un testo del 1200 dove si parlava di questa pianta molto diffusa in Cina e in India.
Sì.
Continuando il discorso del professor Zannini, no, della mitizzazione e della epicità del tè, questo è un fatto che smentisce tutta quella letteratura figa di moda, di belle fotografie, che parla di Mr. Fortune che ha rubato questi semi dalla Cina e li ha piantati in India. Non so se è chiaro.
Sì. Ho capito. Il testo
Ma del Kissa Yoji? No, di Cina.
Cina solo.
Sì, però
No, dunque il monaco Eisai
sì.
è andato 2 volte in Cina.
Sì.
Una delle 2 volte lui voleva andare in India, ma non gli hanno dato il permesso i cinesi di andare in India e quindi è rimasto in Cina, quindi
sì.
Non parla di tè
Sì,
indiano.
però lei parla di un testo che parla, ho letto prima, che parla di questa pianta diffusa in Cina e in India, ed è un testo del 1200.
Probabilmente è quello che ho citato io, il Kissa Io Giochi, sì.
Perché secondo un'idea comune, non reale, il tè in India si è diffuso, diciamo, intorno al 1700 con Mr. Fortune che ha rubato questi semi dalla Cina e li ha piantati in India, no? Questo è quello che si legge sui libri. È un fatto che smentisce.
No, ma si legge,
Cioè, tu vedi una contraddizione in questo?
Io vedo nella contraddizione di quello che si è voluto raccontare dopo, ovvero che gli inglesi sono quelli che poi hanno piantato il tè in India.
Sì, diciamo questo, che per i giapponesi il buddismo e quindi la cultura che ricevevano dal continente venivano dalla Cina e dall'India passavano in Cina e dalla Cina in Giappone, per cui i giapponesi che non conoscevano l'India, lui ha cercato di andare ma non gli hanno permesso di andare. L'India era, come dire, lo stadio più antico del buddismo, ma anche del tè probabilmente, però era una cosa mitica per loro, naturalmente non sapevano nulla dell'India, era semplicemente il fatto che siccome sapevano che il buddismo veniva dall'India alla Cina e poi dalla Cina al Giappone, supponevano che anche la cultura del tè venisse dall'India alla Cina e poi dalla Cina al Giappone, però era una cosa completamente così mitica.
Sorry, we were talking about that's about the Indian region of tea that was explaining that.
Thank you all. I just have a question for Professor Bennett about the Global Tea Initiative. I'm just wondering what it is about and what's the plan. Thank you.
Thank you for asking that wonderful question. I'm happy to share information. So we aim to create an institute, transform ourselves from the Global Tea Initiative, which is all about hoping for the future, into the Global Tea Institute for the study of tea culture and science on our campus. In doing that, we want to encourage and advance research and knowledge, evidence-based knowledge, on tea from any perspective, in any place, from any time. So not just study tea from China, which as a sinologist, of course, I'm happy to do, but also respect the cultures of tea in Vietnam or East Asia, Southeast Asia, Australia, Europe, and the New World, et cetera, et cetera. So all around the world, from any time that there was tea culture up through today, both from the social and cultural perspectives, but also from the scientific, health, medicine, nutrition, agriculture, production processes, legal issues. Any way you can think about studying tea, we want to support that kind of research and teaching. So that's the overall goal. How we're trying to make it happen is by advancing that research on our campus through faculty and student research and teaching at the undergraduate and graduate level. So we're starting to develop a curriculum for an undergraduate, minor, and graduate level, either a designated emphasis, which is sort of a minor at the graduate level, and also an MA degree in tea, culture, and science, but also partner with top-tier research universities around the world who are also doing important research on tea, culture, and or science, so that we can leverage our abilities on each campus to improve the research and the knowledge and expand the extension of knowledge about tea, culture, and science around the world. And also, so that's the advanced upper level education. We also want to respond to our colleagues and friends and experts in the tea industries, and try to help by shaping knowledge, help the industries help shape the consumer demand, and a kind of demand that is demanding tea of the highest quality because people understand what is good tea. And so it's a pretty ambitious desire to encourage knowledge, evidence-based knowledge, not just the myth as Livio was telling us. There's all sorts of stuff out there, but there's a lot that's already very good research, but there's an awful lot of myth that gets circulated about tea, and it's time for us to demonstrate responsibly through research what tea actually is. When we are a university-endorsed initiative, which is to say, 5 years ago, we had an idea, and we had a research cluster of 12 faculty, and we thought it was a good idea. After 3 years of working on it together, then the university thought, we think you guys are onto something. So I was invited to present the notion to our administration. The administration said, wow, great idea, make it blossom. And so they charged us with having one symposium a year to help bring attention to the initiative and move it forward and transition towards becoming an institute. So our third annual event is going to be in this February 22nd and 23rd in 2018, at my campus, University of California, Davis, and you're all welcome to come. It's free and open to the public, and it will be on the topic of the future of tea, issues in sustainability and preservation. Always, we will balance culture and science presentations. This time, we're also adding in some farmers as well, and experts who are helping enhance sustainability practices on tea farms around the world. So again, it will be a global event for global tea and global approaches. Thank you so much for asking that question.
Thank you.
Any more question? Any more question from the floor? Yes.
Just a question for Professor Tollini. In the text of Eisai, it was mentioned the word Sencha, but in Japan, Sencha is itself, it was started to made only in late 1700. So I was wondering, what is the actual character that stands for Sencha? That if it means something else than actual shaped Sencha as we know it today, or?
In the text there is written, well, I don't know the Chinese pronunciation, of course, but it's Sencha, is it? And well, I think that that it is Sencha, that is infusion, because sorry, because this was the, I don't know, maybe there's some expert on Chinese tea can tell, but probably in China they used Sencha, the infusion. So when the monk brought it to Japan, they used the Chinese style of making tea, that is Sencha, because what is used in the Chanoyu, of course, is different. It's not Sencha, but you know, it's matcha, which is powder. They make tea by powder. But maybe that, I don't know how is it in China. Maybe Zanini can say, or Marco Cesar can say something more.
Sencha was
how it was in China. But in the very beginning, probably they used the style used in China.
I mean, before becoming a style, Sencha was simply verb object, jian, which means to brew, to boil, and cha, which means tea. So it's just a verb plus object expression, making tea, boiling tea. And then it was, when it was transferred to Japan, it turned into a style, and a school and a style and what comes with it. But it was a very simple verb object sentence.
Oh, I see. And anyway, in Japan they use both Sencha, even today, and matcha. But in the tea ceremony, there's no Sencha. Sencha is for everyday use, but in the tea ceremony, it's only matcha. Actually, there is also, let's say, a minor tea ceremony with the Sencha. Which is not so much spread, it's not so much common, but there is.
No, I studied it in Japan.
We had a very beautiful demonstration of that 2 years ago at the symposium on Japanese tea, if I remember.
Yes, exactly. Yes.
Maybe I add a little addition, and I just mentioned in my presentation, and by the late Ming Dynasty, the way they make the tea in Suzhou is called jiancha. And as Marco said, this is the same character in Chinese, but the pronunciation is sencha in Japan. So actually it's a style. You put the leaf inside the water and boil it until it is ready. And so this is a style. But by the end of Ming Dynasty, because China was going to fall, so a lot of Chinese people, especially from Fujian, they moved to Japan. Especially one of the important monks is called Yin Yuan, and he went to Nagasaki and then to Uji to build the one Fukuji there. So they started the Sencha there, the Sencha door there. But of course, before that, you have the literary exchange. So some Chinese teaware or Chinese things went to Japan. It was so popular there and so expensive there. So it's a kind of practice spread around the literary and some merchants. And actually, at the beginning, it's a style of infusion of leaf tea. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you all.
More questions? Yes.
I have one for Professor Burnett. I like the approach, the cross-cultural and border culture approach very much. And I was wondering if you know other examples of the same approach applied to tea research, apart from yours, obviously.
No. For
That
tea
was
research,
really
at the
interesting.
moment, no, but maybe Livio might, and Wing Chi or Marco might. I am relatively new to tea research. My research has been on all sorts of other things, but not tea. As much as I love tea and love teapots, and so of course I want to, if I have an excuse to study a teapot, I'll take it. But that hasn't been the dominant, my dominant research agenda. So I'm relatively new to tea research. Maybe you folks would be able to answer that question.
I think the only other case is the one we have just discussed. The confrontation, the Japan and China. This is very useful comparing the two aspects because they were, in Japan, they have a lot of sources much more detailed than in China. So sometimes you have more detailed and efficient description of tea in Japanese sources than in the Chinese one.
Sure.
I would say, if I may add, that tea is per se cross-cultural. Just think of how it spread around, and the fact that 10 minutes ago we were discussing about tea in Japan and India, tea in China and India, where was it born first, here or there, and then the way it moved to Japan, and from China to Europe, and through different routes, and the name which is different in different languages, European languages, you have the tea, the te root, and the chai root. So per se I would say is a cross-cultural subject par excellence.
And each culture developed a particular way of drinking tea. For example, in Japan, it's very typical of tea ceremony and so on. That is a highly formalized way of drinking tea. And that's because probably the Japanese like to formalize everything in their society. So according to the local culture, tea drinking took a very special flavor, a very special way of preparing tea and drinking tea. This depends on the local cultures.
And I wonder, is anything in Japan we could go, the Japanese way is Italian way of drinking coffee in Japan. I was guided by Japanese friend how to drink Italian coffee. So I wonder about the global issue right now. We are talking about even the Chinese are now in the museum department. We can't say Chinese art, we have to say world art or global art. And is there any kind of global tea in the future we may have to face? I only can get Japanese rice from Italy now, hardly to get from Japan in Europe. So I'm just questioning about this, the research. We are so busy with different research. Where do we still talk about authenticity right now? Or just looking for the next trend?
Are you waiting for an answer?
I want to
No, well, yeah, well, I don't know what will happen in the future. You know, I'm also a scholar in Buddhist studies, and the same for Buddhism. Buddhism was born in India, went to China, and then went to Japan and all over Asia. And in the local culture, it took different forms. And now it came to the West, and in the West, it's taking a new form. And what will be in the future? Well, I think my personal idea is that the strongest culture will spread its own culture also in tea drinking. So maybe that the next very strong culture will be China, for example. So maybe that tea drinking will be according to Chinese style. Maybe.
More questions? Yes.
About because you mentioned the place Suzhou a couple of times, I'm just wondering what's the significance of Suzhou in the development of tea history, and is there a special kind of tea or special fashion that developed out from Suzhou? Thank you.
This takes about a couple of hours to answer.
The question.
Actually, Suzhou civilization or Suzhou cultural scene was very important in the Ming Dynasty. One of the causes, there are many small enterprises started to grow up in Suzhou first, on silk, on all kinds of handcrafts. So at that time, Suzhou became the center of culture and economy in the Ming Dynasty. So at that time, and it was criticized, the Suzhou Style sometimes is too much, and they call Suzhou Yang, that means Suzhou Style. And it's like the Paris today on the fashion scene. And some people create some new clothing, new style, and then immediately it was followed by other people. And also Suzhou is the head of the calligraphy and painting, so a lot of scholars there. And Suzhou is also famous for the guqin. They play guqin, they have a style of the Suzhou. So at that time, actually Suzhou was admired by so many people and become the highlight or the focus of the whole cultural people. And even the emperor have some straightforward officers to bring the Suzhou style into the palace. And of course in Suzhou they produce, today it's a Bilochun, and in that time they have a very famous tea called Fuqiu. There's a Tiger Hill, and they also several green tea around. And so this is why it is so important in the Ming Dynasty.
I might add a few words about, exactly all this. It was like the center of fashion at that time, like Paris in the last century. So everybody was just imitating Suzhou people. So the clothes were from Suzhou, the silk was from Suzhou, the most trendy, everything was from Suzhou at that time. So everybody was studying that style. And about tea, if you just, as Professor Ip said, if you look at the number of treatises about tea written in the Ming Dynasty, that they are the most numerous, they're more than a half of the total produced in the whole imperial era. 90% of the authors were from Jiangzhou area, and most of them from Suzhou. So there was Suzhou, and then you have, of course, Fuzhou as a second pole for this, but for sure, Jiangnan and Jiangzhou area was the most important place for tea. And Suzhou, and I might say also Wuxi, even more original, has for the bamboo stove and for the yixing was also very important. The Wu area.
Actually, Suzhou is not a city in the concept of today. Actually, it's a rather bigger area called Wu.
Wu area, right.
because I think we are running short of time, and the good people who keep this place open, they're eager to go home and start their long weekend. So, if there's any more question, I urge you to speak now or
Next year.
or be silent forever. Yes. One.
What's the reception of tea in Italy nowadays? Sorry. My question is about the reception of tea in Italy in contemporary time.
Reflection. I'm sorry, I'm
The-
a bit deaf.
Sorry.
Reception.
Reception, yes.
I think, well, I'm not the best person to answer this kind of question because my experience is, well, I suppose it's good, otherwise we won't be here and we won't keep young people locked up an entire day on a Saturday talking, listening to tea talks. So I suppose it's good, and also judging from what I read and from the response that our association gets, the reception is increasingly high and positive. So, of course, there's going to be, to a certain degree, I think, a globalization of the way tea is consumed, or at least certain aspects are going to be looked over in favor of more practical ways of consuming. But I would say that it's positive. If you look in major cities, Venice doesn't count as well as one, but the tea houses and tea shops and places where tea is sold, whether good or bad is another story, but they are getting more and more popular. So I would say yes, that reception is definitely good. Much better for sure than it was 20, 30 years ago.
May I ask, well, actually my question can be asked in a more specific way, is how do you compare tea and other beverages such as coffee in Italy? And you said there is increasing popularity of tea nowadays than 20 years ago, and I wonder what's the reason behind?
The reason is, in my opinion, but again, it's my opinion, and I do not have statistics, and I don't like to talk without having a solid data to discuss. But just, playing it by ear, I would say that there's a general interest for health, natural medicine, holistic medicine, Chinese or generally speaking, in many inverted commas, Oriental medicine, and I think this gave a big boost.
Yeah, I think that while in the West the drinking of green tea is increasing, and maybe that is also due to cultural factors. For example, the boom of Japanese culture, together with manga maybe and anime, many other elements of Japanese culture come to the West, and one of which is maybe drinking green tea. But what is very interesting, because I have some statistics, that tea drinking in Japan is decreasing, while coffee drinking in Japan is increasing. And this is due to cultural factors, not healthy factor or the trend of being drinking something healthy and so on, but to cultural factors. So we should think about tea drinking also as as a cultural element, a cultural factor.
Absolutely. The cultural factor is really significant even to commercialism, to consumerism rather, and also to the science. So while I don't know about Italy per se and Italy tea culture, I can tell you that what Marco was describing for Italy is very much happening in the United States, and that is the millennials, are finding, around the United States and elsewhere, are finding, are desiring to be healthier. They're going local products. They're going organic products. They want healthy for their bodies. They might want to make good social choices, so environmentally sustainable products. So there is a rise of tea because it is perceived, and there's a lot of anecdotal evidence and scientific evidence that it is very beneficial to the health. So people are starting to turn away from things like soda, the cola and soda drinks, and going more towards the teas, and including green tea. In the United States, 3 years ago, I read a paper that said that by last year, the consumption of prepared tea beverages would be, the rate of sale would be at, the market would be at $6 billion US. And now, more recently, I read a paper that said by 2020, the market value of ready-to-drink, that's bottled beverage teas, would be at $7 billion. So you can see this steady, in very rapid climb for consumption, just for ready-to-drink beverages. Also, by 2020, the study said that the restaurant-served teas would be at $20 billion. That's just the U.S. So if Italy is, if you're experiencing the same kind of surge and attention to tea and away from things that are less healthy, then I would expect to see the same thing. Now, you raise a really interesting point about the increase of coffee, and that is a purely, well, I mean, it's taste, of course, but it is very cultural, why you make this choice and that against that choice. And so I think that one of the exciting things about tea research is that the social and cultural components can tell us an awful lot about what's happening in a culture and society, why they change and how they change. And so there's a very rich field and wide open for research by young scholars such as yourselves.
Thank you.
I think, any more question? I will allow one. Yes, okay. And then we really have to leave, and unfortunately.
Hello. I have a question for Master and Professor Ipe Wing Chi. Since well, tonight you had Feng Wang Dan Song, sorry for my pronunciation of Chinese, and also we talk about Wu Ji Shan. They have in common the Shuishan variety, and I've been trying to understand from a long time where does it originate. So where do you think the Shuishan variety originates, come from really in the beginning?
You mean the Wishan?
Shuishan.
Shuishan. Okay.
Sorry. I don't speak Chinese.
There are two different Shuishan. Which is the region of the Shuishan, but there are two.
The origin.
Pinzhou. Shuishan Pinzhou.
Actually, Shuishan is from a place called Jian'ou, and near Wuyishan. It is not originated in Wuyishan, and so the translation making into Shuishan is a mistake, because at that time, the original plant was found in a temple called Zhuxian Miao and worship for immortals. So the pronunciation of Zhuxian is similar to Shuixian. So later it was translated into Shuixian. So this is a place called Jian'ou, maybe about 300 kilometers from Wuyi. But this place is also a production of of the jianyao, the
okay,
rabbit
jianyao.
hair bowl. Yeah. So this is the original plant. But also suixian is another term of making, because suixian was so popular. So now the tea making in a loose shape, long shape, and we call this suixian also. So there are many kinds of suixian. Even in Suzhou, they call the danchong is suixian also. And so this term have two meaning. One meaning is about the varietal. The other meaning is about the shape, how they roll the tea in long stick. This is also the meaning of suixian.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, welcome.
Okay, then I think it's about time to start. We can thank everybody for your perseverance in attending and staying here. Thanks to the speakers for their wonderful papers, and I promise that there will be a fourth conference
Edition next year.